of 2024. With that law, President William Ruto will now appoint 9 members of the selection panel within 14 days, I beg your pardon, who will then begin the process of shortlisting commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Now, within 90 days, the panel will select 2 qualified individuals for the chairperson role and 9 for the commissioner's role, which will be forwarded to President William Ruto for nomination. And so that is about 3 months between now and when the country expects a fully constituted Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Nudin, that also means, at least 3 months before Kenyans have begun collecting signatures to recall the members of parliament can then actually begin the process. But let's discuss the process of boundaries delimitation. That is now what is next after the reconstitution of IEBC. Where does that exercise come in after the constitution, and how urgent is it, considering that its constitutional deadline has already lapsed?
That we'll find ourselves in a very interesting situation, because as you rightfully say, the deadline has lapsed. But I think the defense will be that there was no commission to do the delimitation. And I see, as per the amendment, there's something come up with here. They talk about the commission will notify the public of the intended review once they want to do it, and also invite representations from interested parties. And by interested parties, they don't mean political class, because kuna mtu atajikatia constituency yake so that he can become a member of parliament. And as she rightfully says, public participation should be taken up, not just lip service. And specify the period within which the commission shall publish the preliminary reports. For me, we come at a situation where there was a discussion that there were some constituencies that might end up losing their status, courtesy of the fact that most of them were actually taken up to had a lifespan. You remember those? I don't know how many there were. Yes,
about 27 protected.
And so we have a situation where that issue will crop up again. But I'm really intrigued as to how they will do it, because you remember the political class were moving up and down during campaigns, making all sorts of promises. Oh, we'll give you a county here, we will give you a constituency here, and I hope they don't try and influence that, because if they do so, we will miss the plot as to the delimitation. Because it talks about, it looks at the population, and it looks at the culture, it looks at, there are a lot of things it looks at as per the constitution. So I do believe and hope that we can be able to do it. Yes, there's the issue of the time that has lapsed, but the courts will, if we seek an interpretation from the court, of course we'll be guided moving forward. But I just hope that there will be no political interference, which that means I'm living under a rock, because it will happen. But even if it happens, it should be for the betterment of the people, as opposed to the political class.
For you, Wanjiku, when you speak about boundaries delimitation, why is it important that the youth take it seriously as they call for, among other things, better representation, that resources follow the constituency levels, but also as they call for proper management and a cut in spending altogether?
It's important because now, at the end of the day, young people will be part of the process. Okay. Let's say, for example, Michelle, you were born and you met a county called Kiambu. Oh, you don't know where that name came from, isn't it? So this time, young people have the opportunity to give names to new wards that will be born, to constituencies. We'll feel part of Kenya at the end of the day, and this is what will inspire patriotism. It will inspire values such as non-discrimination from young people, because I mean, we were with you when we were naming a ward. Even if you're not from this ward, but you've come, but you were part of the process when you were doing this. So it's an opportunity for young people to really own Kenya. And at the end of the day, this is what young people have been asking for. This is what we've been asking, to be part of processes in our country. And even as we are taking part of this, and we are being part of the delimitation of electoral units, it's also a step for young people, or an opportunity for young people to register as voters. Because young people vote online, and I want them to understand that that doesn't count. the votes that count are nizile kwenye debe. So also, as this is ongoing, it's an opportunity to interact with IEBC to also be registering people as voters at the end of the day, or actually really advocating young people to go to the constituency office, because they are open throughout constituency office, and that is information that young people maybe are not privy, I'm sure they're not even privy to. So it's also an opportunity for young people to also interact with IEBC as a body, because we only just know IEBC just during voting. The young people don't understand that IEBC is always open throughout the 5 years. So it's also an opportunity. It's
not just the commissioners.
Yes. It's an opportunity for young people to interact with the body, to understand more what it does. And it's what Nurdin was saying, that you see, we don't have, as young people, civic engagement or civic education is on the low, but also because young people didn't understand the budget processes at county level, that we have to have a budget for civic education. By the end of the day, it's on the low. And that's something we are fighting for in Kiambu County, to ensure that we have civic engagement money so that you can be able to educate people. So,
the biggest entry, Nurdin, for IEBC, even as this process begins, would be to foster that public trust in both in the commission and in the country's electoral system. Are you seeing, perhaps in the wake of this Gen Z movement, that those bodies that have been given the responsibility to appoint or select members of the IEBC selection panel, are they likely to give priority to members within their different sectors that are youth and represent the Gen Z to foster that public trust?
You see, the issue of public trust should not even be an issue, because you see, when you see IEBC, I stands for independent, you know. We expect to be independent, but in reality it's not. And that is the truth of the matter. And it's not just IEBC. Most of the commissions we have, most of the institutions we have are really not independent, because there is political interference. More so IEBC because it brings about capture of power. The ideal situation is that we have a selection panel that works for the people as opposed to the political class. But with the criteria they have come up with, we've already lost that battle. Because when the political class has 5 representatives out of 9, it means already have a majority in voting. So my question is, you're talking about majority and minority parties as per the new law. What happens to me if I'm running for office as an independent president or candidate? What happens to me? You see, it begs the question. I feel disenfranchised. So I can walk to court and seek interpretation and term this unconstitutional. So that is the first hurdle. The second hurdle is we need to have a conversation. She rightfully talked about IDs. There are those communities like the Nubian community. I was part and parcel of their case in the Huduma number. There are those communities that have lacked identification documents for decades. Someone is 35, 36, 38 with no ID, and that person without an ID is as good as dead, because they can't have a bank account, they can't work, they can't go anywhere. So you have a situation where, and now we put fees as to getting IDs and replacing IDs. What does that say? We have population that don't have money. So if someone loses their ID today, and they don't have that 1,000 bob to purchase, to get another ID, technically you're buying your citizenship. I don't even understand that, you know. So what happens when now the registration drive for voters comes? You don't have an ID. So to the young men and women out there, since the motto is gas, gas and no brakes, if you have an ID, keep it safe. Don't even work with it too much. Wait to be registered as a voter. Make sure you move this online movement to now become voters. Now take that movement from the spaces, be it X, be it Instagram, be it TikTok, and now come to the decision making. The table isn't just like this table. You see, when voting, you're making a decision. Make sure every single clown that you have circled goes home, that you are after. And you make sure you don't just vote to punish someone, because you have this culture of let us punish person X. You're punishing yourself, because a clown will sleep in there and get into office and you start asking yourself what happened. So let us make informed decisions. It's sad that our politics is based on, it has been commercialized. Again, Kanu politics. Those with money always end up with seats, because they come, it's like I call for a rally, I talk to people, wataniuliza unatuacha aje, kama sina unga ama 500 shillings, they'll never come back to my rally. That person who pays you, remember, must recoup whatever they spend during elections. That is why they cry for CDF. And I have said it adamantly. We don't need members of parliament with CDF. Because when you ask them 5 years after elections, what have you done? CDF, bursary. But when representation was happening, legislation and oversight, they are never in the house.
Okay.
So, and we've had a member of parliament tell us that mimi sina time ya kizungu mingi, hiyo niliachia watu fulani. So we need to raise the occasion and realize that whoever we elect will affect our lives, either positively or negatively. And by negatively, it means we'll have another movement champion out here crying out loud because we elected clowns into office. So we need, one, as she says, civic education. But I think right now people are at a point where they have realized the importance of voting. So we move from social media, don't leave it, but make sure that you actually register as voters in droves. And on the election date, make sure you wake up. Queue, do not be afraid of that queue. Just queue. Make sure you vote. From there, you can go home. So that we avoid a situation where you fail to vote and then you keep ranting for 5 years.
Michelle, I would like to weigh on this issue. Nuruddin feels gloom about the IEBC amendment and the commissioners that will come in, and that all is lost. But I feel like not all is lost. I'm cognizant if the majority who will come in, let's say, first of all, like, let me just go back kidogo. I would like to really appreciate the president, because if you look at during campaign period, UDA had the most youthful candidates. We saw other parties that really denied young people of party tickets. I was among the people who were denied party tickets. But President Samuel Ruto gave young people an opportunity to lead. So this means that a lot of young people transited into parliament. And this means that even when now we are having nomination into the commission, we will have representation of young people. So this means that after the finance bill, reject finance bill, a lot of MPs were mesalimiwa. Now they're regretting their decisions, like, I should have listened to young people. This means that already there's an instilled, let me say, realization or waking up that parliamentarians now sort of have, that I have to represent young people too as I make this decision. So there'll be the recognition that I'm not here just to serve somebody. I'm also here to serve because nitasalimiwa pia, you know, and they wouldn't want that to happen at the end of the day. So not all is not lost at the end of the day. We have to remain very optimistic at the end of the day. And as he says, young people have to go back and ensure that they're participating. NGCDF is an important tool. It's very true that MPs, all they do is say, you see, I've built, you know, I'm giving bursary, I'm doing this. But also because we vote incompetent people. We have a young woman who's very merited in Kirinyaga County, the county women rep. With her funds, what she does is phenomenal. She just doesn't say, you see, I'm helping, you know, I'm supporting, marginalized in my community. But also she does a lot of representation in parliament. So again, at the end of the day, I feel like we will be taking steps back, scrapping off NGCDF, which is funding that really supports community at community level. Yes. All right.
I'd like to discuss, you know, when the IEBC bill was signed yesterday, we had the ODM leader Raila Odinga mention the previous IEBC commissioners who he said were a shame for the country. Now, many, you know, there's many names, you know, the Chebukati 7 or the Cherera 4, whichever way you choose to lean. You began by raising issues of Chapter 6 and issues of integrity. And even the Gen Z movement has been big on ensuring that those who take these independent officers and state positions are compliant with Chapter 6 of the Constitution. What are your expectations? You know, even with the new act coming in to make it clear, you know, who can do what, that people cannot sit in as a chairperson and the chairperson isn't there. But with regard to integrity, what are you expecting to see in the commission?
I hope and pray that they have read the room and that Kenya is at a point where mediocrity will no longer be entertained. We're at a point where questions will always be asked. People are asking for accountability. We're at a point where that if you believe that whoever put you there is who is your boss, people will come, as she says, utasalimiwa. It is the truth of the matter, because this issue of being given a slot by someone means you work for them. So when will you work for those who are paying you? Because you're being paid by the taxpayer. So your allegiance should be to the taxpayer. And you know, they take an oath of office whenever they assume these offices. Make sure, because I do understand the pressure that comes with being an IEBC commissioner, because there are phone calls you'll get from the big boys will call you. They'll ask you, where Fanya, if you do this, do that. Because, you know, even IEBC has been termed jokingly in the streets as one of the 1,000 ways to die. You know, so you find a situation where I hope no other commissioner will lose any other commissioner, because we have lost some already. It doesn't make sense. We even lost returning officers during the last elections. Let those who work for IEBC be given space to perform their duties away from political interference, because let us not lie to one another. When the election day comes here, even these by-elections we're talking about, like Banisa and Ital, of course there will be pressure. But we have to raise the occasion. Those who will get this chance to represent the people as commissioners, they rise beyond party politics, because when your party sponsors you, you're beholden to your party. Like the members of parliament tell us, respect the party leader, party line, party position, devoid of corruption, because corruption is also a menace. Because if you go in there and you're corrupt, we'll hear issues of ballot papers, tenders, queries. And also devoid of a premeditated intention. Like you're here to make a person ex-president. Because if you do that, then there will be an outcry, there will be an uproar, and there will be an issue. So let whoever assumes to become a commissioner know that that is a very high calling, because the fate of the country is in your hands. So you either help the country move forward or you destroy the country. Because people are at a point where they will ask questions and they will no longer be quiet. Because the political class have always had a say plus their way, and people have always followed them. You know, the days of amesoma tuko sawa, or he has spoken, we are okay. People are now going to follow up every single legislation that is brought to parliament. People are going to follow every single act the commission that come into office will do. And let us not have a situation where ballot papers are printed 3 months to an election, because that brought about confusion in Mombasa and in Kakamega gubernatorial elections. We need to be serious as a country, plan early, so that we avoid an issue where we do things in haste, and during that time we lose funds, and two, we do a sham of an elections.
You know, integrity is key in public management in many sectors, Wanjiku, but maybe most important when it comes to IEBC in the Kenyan context. What are your expectations with regard to integrity in the commissioners that we will see within the next 90 days?
Of course, Michelle, that has to be among the key values that we need to see with the commissioners, because we have to be integral as leaders of this country. Because you see, if you are integral, then it also inspires, as a leader, it inspires also a fellow Kenyan to be integral. At the end of the day, and as we are transiting our country into progressive leadership, that's what we want to see. And integrity is pretty important, because also it also pushes national values at the end of the day. And also it also supports the government of the president and the goodwill that the president has. I truly believe that also the president has goodwill for this commission, for commissioners, because he's also having pressure from Kenyans. And it's also an opportunity for him to not matter about balancing tribes with the commissioners or balancing friends. At the end of the day now, he's able to come out and say, hey, to even his friends, hey, you are seeing the pressure that young people are paying on me. I'm not able to take care of anybody's interest. It's now about myself. Right. Because also the president is looking towards to getting, you know, he's going for a re-election. So for him, it's an opportunity for him to also deliver for Kenyans what he promised Kenyans during campaign season. Right. The charters that he signed for the women, for the youth, he has to be able to also to deliver. So for him, integrity of the commissioners who are going to be vetted is important, because also the public now is watching. All right,
let's take some feedback from Kenyans who are watching this morning as the signing or effecting of the IEBC Act takes shape, and we have Trevor Kilelu says, this is exactly why we go to the streets. We are tired of meetings. We're tired of committees. We're tired of lies. We want action. Like the IEBC thing yesterday, that was action. Did it need a meeting or a committee? No, it did not. All right. Jonah Ndalila says, President Ruto and Raila Odinga may form a government of national unity amid youth-led protests. 6 days of dialogue announced. With a new look IEBC on the horizon, youth feel marginalized by recent moves. All right. Omar Hezi says, youth should stop unnecessary ranting and focus on the way forward. Too much accusations of Raila without recognizing his previous struggles will make his followers angry. We now have IEBC. Let's start by recalling these MPs, and the government will know that we are serious. Stop incitement. Samuel Gara says, we want a functional IPOA, independent parliament, IEBC, ESCC, a just police service and judiciary. The executive has captured all arms of government, including the official opposition, and soiled all public institutions. The only institution that remains is we, the people. Dennis Norman says, I'll repeat this again. The storm is coming. We're all patient since the IEBC is not formed yet, but when that day comes, they will not believe it. Ferdinand Nguna says, this is why I kept saying that IEBC, dissolution of the cabinet, those are not the solutions. The solution is uprooting the entire system out. We build everything afresh. All right, and Sylvia says, to set the record straight, yesterday's events of signing the IEBC bill into law was as a result of the NADCO report that was done from last year, with a lot of engagement from the public, and was finalized in early March 2024. It had nothing to do with the ongoing youth push. All right. And that's what Kenyans are saying this morning. We'd like to get more of your feedback as you keep the conversation going on social media. But Nurdin, as we wind up, what do you make of the views of Kenyans, and especially the one who says the only standing institution now is we, the people? What task does President Ruto have now to foster that public trust in the austerity measures and the concessions that he's making to get to a good place with the Gen Z protests?
As one of them rightfully says, actions doesn't need, what he just needs to do is act on their demands, because they are the employers. Act on their demands, and that will itself will show whether they'll trust him or not. And by actions, I do not mean what they have done. This so-called thing they want to come up with government national unity, this will just put this thing, the gas pedal will get hotter, because at the end of the day, this is not what the people want. They have demands that they have set out. Help them achieve those demands. Most of them are things to do with the economy, you know, because it has gotten to a point where even the middle class are now talking about elections. Right. Those who are always aloof and seated somewhere chilling, as we are told. But now we're at a point where he needs to act. The public confidence is low. And for that to change, his actions will either make it get lower to the pits or make them trust him. So, like one of them rightfully says, the first action, IEBC, we move forward. And remember, and Kenyans are happy because now they can take some of these people home to show that we hire you and we fire you. Because it was very wrong that members of parliament believe that they are there by virtue of their might. All right. As opposed to being elected by the people. Okay. That is Article 1 of the Constitution, sovereign power. And people can either exercise it directly, as they were doing, or through delegated power, which members of parliament do. So people can decide today we don't want a parliament. Where will you take them? We want to go back to having council of elders. What will you do? We don't want to have a president. What will you do? Because the power belongs to them. So when they say we do not want to have a dialogue, that is their decision. They say we want to act on corruption. That is their decision. We want a purge in your cabinet. That is their decision. Whether that purge will bring about issues between you and your members in the they don't care. But head other
Wanjiku, very briefly as we wind up, Gen Z said they are in comments. What are your expectations?
Another whole of the cabinet, definitely. There are people who have slept on their jobs, and that meant the president looking bad. And this is an opportunity. I am encouraging the president to please take this opportunity to right these wrongs that the people who you've entrusted with these key responsibilities in failing you. We assure you that we are not looking at balancing, regional balancing or tribal balancing. We don't care. Young people are behind the overhaul that we sort of expect you to do, and please understand that we only want merit. And again, we also would like to see to that gender role being observed. Right. At the end of the day, the president has had a flourishing career in leadership. We want to see him really entrust himself and us as citizens to prosperity. Okay, absolutely. Yes.
That's a good way to end it. That is Wanjiku Thiga. She is a gender and justice advocate. We've also been speaking to Nuruddin Kagai, who is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya on the new IEBC Act, which took effect yesterday and paves the way for the reconstitution of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Many thanks for watching us this morning. My name is Michelle Nkele Oviabo. Good morning.